Well, look, I think there's about three things that have saved me millions and millions and millions of dollars, never compromising on. The first one is definitely been.
Andy, question number one. Andy, you consistently talk about zero options mentality with personal development and your goals. What are some things that you will never compromise on in your business?
Well, look, I think there's about three things that have saved me millions and millions and millions of dollars, never compromising on. The first one is definitely been my mental mindset and my physical being, okay? In my opinion, head, heart, body are your tools. They are your weapon. And if you're going to go to war with some weak-ass weapons, you're going to lose, all right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is my standards, all right? I have found that when I have caved to the pressure of lowering my standards in any way, shape, or form, for any reason, at any time, I have always lost every single time. And it's hard not to do that when you have pressure to do that from people that you actually respect or people that are following you. You know, sometimes things are really hard and they say, well, look, if we could just do this, you know, things could be easier. And every time I've done this, when everybody else wanted to do it, I've lost. You know, and the third thing I think is the people that I keep around me. You know, I have very high standards for the people that I call friends, the people that I keep around me. Those people influence you. They make up your entire life in every single way. And if you have the wrong people around you and you compromise and let them around you, I think it's going to fuck your plan up. It has me. Every time I've let someone in, you know, you and I have talked about this a lot. Every time I've given someone the benefit of the doubt and said, oh, you know, I kind of look past the things that are a little red flags and I'm like, it ends up burning me, man. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I think your mind, your body, your standards, and your relationships are three things that should never, ever, ever be compromised on. What do you think?
I have some thoughts.
Yeah.
So number one, the first thing that came to mind was product. So in terms of like, what are you going to sacrifice? Because a lot of times there's always like the shortcut that always is more profitable in the short term, but not as profitable in the long term. And in a world that gets measured by weeks and months and quarters, then the shortcut always makes sense. But when you measure it in decades, it literally never does. And so when I had a buddy of mine who started a cookie business, it's a really simple business, right? And I was like, how are you going to go about like figuring this out? And when he told me the story, I knew he was going to be successful. So he said, well, what I did was I looked up the top selling cookies in the US, like all the boutique ones, like the ones that they put online that they can still ship them like across the US, even though they have a local shop. And I fly out there and I try and pay the chef to show me what they do. And then I fly back and I try and bake the cookies. He's like, and right now I'm on batch 226. And every day I bring them into the gym and I have people try them and they give me feedback and I'm iterating it. So like when you're developing a product, if you have that level of care, the likelihood that you're going to win is super high. But the converse of that is if you have a really shitty product, all the marketing does is let more people know about it faster. And so then you get in the selling business, which is a really tiring business to be in. Like I can tell you as somebody who like came from the direct response world earlier on in my career, knowing every month that I had to sell more people than the month before just to grow the business or even break even is incredibly, and the bigger you get, the more unsustainable.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, it's unsustainable.
Yeah, it is.
But if you can get credit for who you sold 5 years ago because they're still telling new people about you, it's the only way that you can continue to scale. The second thing that I wouldn't sacrifice on is quality of the team. And I think that, and this is, I mean, Andy and I are hidden standards from two different angles here.
We're talking, I'm talking personal, you're talking business. This goes hand in hand.
And so I will say that of the entrepreneurs that I continue to see bigger and bigger and grow every year and be more successful, the bar only continues to rise on who they let in. And I think Amazon actually has a really good, at least motto around this that we've tried to model at acquisition.com, which is everybody who comes in has to raise the average of the team. Because you probably heard the saying like A's hire B's, B's hire C's, and C's should like get the fuck out of there, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like, this is why organizations as they scale continue to get diluted over time because like dumb people let dumber people in because they're threatened by someone who's as good or even better than them. Mm-hmm. But people who can lead with humility want other players on the team. And what happens is if you can create a virtuous cycle rather than a vicious cycle of a deterioration of talent, but a building or accumulation of talent, then when someone comes in who's not of the talent because they lied or they looked good on the interview, people are like, dude, we got to get this guy fucking out of here. Like he's not holding his weight because we're all running and this guy's just doing the law of least effort. He's just barely trying to get above the bar. And we don't want that on the team.
that's a massive pain point for most entrepreneurs. They cannot figure out how to get their culture to self-regulate. This what Alex is explaining is exactly how it's done.
And the thing is again, all the first two, so product and then the people, you'll notice that when we talk about like the things you absolutely can't sacrifice on are the easiest ones to sacrifice on because you're usually in pain of some sort. When you want to sacrifice on product, it's because you want to make profit in the short term or you want to get something to market faster. It's usually some sort of impatience. With people, it's the exact same thing. You're in pain because you've got a hole in the company that you're like, dude, we need somebody in customer support yesterday, right? Yeah, right. Exactly. Anyways, you're suffering from this hole and you want to fill it in the short term. But the thing is like the hiring, onboarding, training, and then when that person sucks because you took them on too fast, then having to do it again, not to mention the lost revenue that you should have made in that period of time.
People don't think about that. They don't even think about it. It costs so much more to run that way.
And it's so like think about the culture as the product, the internal product of the business, and the product you sell to customers is the external product. What you're doing when you bring someone in who's not as good is you're diluting the internal product of the company. And so both of these are actually dilution of products. It's just one is outside and one is inside. Mm-hmm. And so both of them are just so tempting because you want to just get out of pain. And so like the overarching viewpoint, I think on probably all the things that Andy and I are going to talk about with these three is it's just you have to be willing to sacrifice the short term to get the long term, which means the team's going to have to work double time. And if you have the culture of killers, you can be like, guys, I'm not going to disrespect you by bringing somebody who can't pull their weight in. And so we're going to work weekends. Like, because the alternative is we bring someone in here, you all hate them. We waste all our time trying to train them. And then they go try and start their own.
Lowers the standard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the third one that I had was brand/values.
Yeah.
And I mean, the first two stem from this last one, which is why I saved it. And I know that you and I are like incredibly aligned on the importance of brand. Like, I think it's just brand over everything, period. Because brand's just another way of saying reputation. And a lot of people who like struggle selling stuff in a business, it's because when you walk in the door, you're coming in at a deficit. You're not even at zero. You have a negative reputation. And the longer you're in business, the worse your reputation gets. So if you're one of those people who are like, man, my cost to acquire a customer, dude, Facebook or YouTube ads are getting more expensive. Well, you can actually see on a graph what the average CPM is, so cost per impression for any kind of ad. If your cost to acquire a customer has gone up by more than that, it means that you have another force that's driving your cost of acquisition up. And it's the negative word of mouth. So everyone's like, oh yeah, word of mouth exists. Okay, well, it also exists in the negative and it's way fucking more powerful and way faster. And that invisible hand is somebody who's like, oh, I would have bought that. Hey, they just like the normal customers in the beginning who didn't know who you were, they say, hey, what do you think of this thing? And in the beginning, someone says, oh, I don't know. It's like, oh, I'm going to check it out. But the second time or the third time or 1 year or 2 years later, they send that text and the person's like, oh, I heard he's full of shit. And that sale that you would have had, you don't have. And so you got to market to twice as many people to get the same number of sales. And then 2 years later, you got to market to 4 times as many people to make the same number of sales. And that's why you see people pop up and fizzle, pop up and fizzle. And if you ever see an entrepreneur, and this might be you, who's always reinventing themselves in terms of the new thing that they're launching right now, why aren't you still selling the first thing you started selling and just making it better?
Well, because you compromise on the product.
And so if you consider the product, if you were a one product business, then like they compromised and the business is done.
Yeah.
And so you can just see the easy proof on all three of those things is like, if on a long enough time horizon, if I dilute the product enough, I'll eventually go to zero. On a long enough time horizon, if I dilute the people enough, I'll eventually go to zero. And on a long enough time horizon, if I sacrifice my brand and my reputation, I'll eventually go to zero.
That's right.
What do you think? What do you guys think is like the hang up, right? So you Alex, you alluded to why people will typically compromise, right? But like, is there another thing there? Like, what are they? Do they have a bad definition of compromise? Like, do they not see the do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that, first of all, I love what you said about the product, dude. Most of you guys could solve every single problem that you have with your entire business by just taking your product and fucking making it the best it can be. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's tires, make the best fucking tire, right? If it's
butterfly t-shirts,
make the best fucking snow cone. Like, it's very simple philosophy. But I think, and it leads into your question, DJ, I think the reason people are so quick to compromise is because there is this false reality painted out there that there is a hack to success of a certain way, right?
Mm.
And so people are so impatient and they hear these glory stories of, you know, oh, I went from 0 to $100 million in 3 fucking days with this guy's, you know, like the expectations of reality have been so muddied that people don't really understand what it takes to win. And what it takes to win is the exact same thing that's always taken to win, which is to be fucking great, undeniably great. And that does start with your product. And it does, you know, continue on to all these other issues that we talked about. You know, I'm talking a little bit more from the personal side, and Alex is hitting on it from the actual business side, but all of these things require zero compromise. And I think because people have this reality painted in their brain that entrepreneurship, there's some sort of hack to it, that they compromise everything.
So like they're not even seeing compromise as a negative thing.
I think it sneaks up on people, bro. And I think people do not understand that this is no different than nature, that the strong survive and the weak get killed and eaten. And it's the same exact thing. And so because we have all these goofballs on the internet for the last 10 years telling everybody they can get rich in a fucking week, we have this false understanding of what it actually takes. And things like product and reputation and the things that he's mentioning are not even taken into account because people think it's so easy to win. And so, you know, I think it's a culture issue, which is why I preach so hard against it, because I think all of those things I think when you compromise any of those 6 things that we talked about, you're fucked. Like, because they all lead to further compromise, which leads to zero. So, you know, I couldn't tell you where it comes from, but my personal opinion is I think it comes from the ridiculous state of entrepreneurship culture that exists in today's environment.
All right, can I piggyback on this? Because I got to come.
Yeah.
All right, so number one, I think your point is spot on with this, which is like, we talk about fact checkers, right?
Yeah, where the fuck are the fact checkers at for this?
Right, where's the fact checkers for the success that people are claiming to have?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm not expecting that realistically, but everybody has to put their fact checking hat on for themselves and think like, does this make sense? Is this reasonable?
Just
Probably
look,
not.
bro.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem is that a lot of people who are early on don't have the perspective from which to make a judgment. So someone we were talking about the other day held up their bank account on a picture, and this happens all over the place, right? It's not one person. They hold up their bank account and they're claiming that they're making, you know, $5-6 million a month, and the amount that they were holding up in the bank account, transparently, have owned businesses. Personally, having owned businesses of that size, like that's like not even a few days of payroll.
No, bro, you'd be in a fucking panic.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that people don't have the perspective of which to make a judgment. Now, when it comes to compromising, I think there's the internal of like, everyone always tries to sacrifice for pleasure today rather than pain today for pleasure tomorrow. That's just like
they're sold
human.
that, bro.
Yeah.
They're predatorily sold that.
And here's the silver lining on this, is that constraints create innovation. So many of us have heard of like the early founder stories of Nike and Apple, and you know, the engineers saying, Steve Jobs, it's impossible, it can't be done, right? But not compromising on the value that you want. Like the reason you started this business for some reason was because you wanted to solve some problem for some person. And as soon as you take that compromise, you actually stifle innovation. You just say like, there is a way. Like there's a way to do this. And if we haven't hit it, then we just need to keep trying.
Bro, that's such a great point.
So we can maintain our values. Yeah. And the thing is that the first time you do it, and this is my ask for everyone, is like, if you can just hold the fucking line once, and you just keep holding the line, you will find a way around it. And then what happens is you start to believe that it's possible, and so does your team. Mm-hmm. And so then the next time it happens, you're like, remember last time? We're going to hold the fucking line. We're not I know they said sugar costs have gone up for our cookies. We're going to find a way. Like we can't get above this price. Like how are we going to do it? Don't tell me we can't, tell me how. Right? And then this is just the common sense that Andy references a lot, which is like, if you go to a sandwich shop and you have a sandwich and it's mediocre, what do? Nothing. And that's what the vast majority of the customers that are going to these mediocre businesses are doing. So right now, if you're average, it's probably because you have an average product. Now, play the reverse scenario out, that the guy at that sandwich shop, and this might be you if you're the guy with the sandwich shop, like eat your own sandwiches on a regular basis. Like, would you eat your sandwiches? Like, do you eat your own dog food? And I think like that cookie story just like gives you a really simple example. But whether you're in IT services, like have you gone through your onboarding process as a customer? Do you know what the communication cadence is? Do you secret shop yourself? Like if you're starting out, one of the easiest things you can do, if you actually have a couple of real friends who really root for you, hopefully you do, just ask them to go through the product as a blind customer. So your employees don't know it's a friend of yours, and have them secret shop you. And then tell you all the things that are wrong. And I promise you, there's always something that's going wrong. Usually a shitload of stuff's going wrong. And if you just fix those things, there are no, I'll tell you one truth that I repeat to my team all the fucking time is that stop looking for the silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. There's 100 golden BBs. And all we have to do is make a list of every single tiny thing that we need to improve. And we start at the top. Because most of us know that there are some things that we should be doing in our business. And then what we want to do is, instead of confronting the should do list, we start the new list, right? This would be new. This would be exciting. But that's because you don't know the should do list on the new thing. And so you just start at the fucking top, and one by one, you just start ticking them off. And I promise you, when you're at number 100, you won't be wondering where the customers are.
Bro, you and I just had this exact conversation on the ride to work today. So today, and this falls right in line with what you're talking about. So today, normally DJ follows me. All right. Today, I rode with him and he drove my Cullinan, my Rolls Royce Cullinan. Okay.
Terrible fucking truck.
Yeah. So as he's driving it, he says, dude, what? Tell him.
Yeah. We pull out the fucking gate and I'm like, Andy, like this fucking truck is unreal. It's unreal. And then I was explaining to him because, it's a busy weekend. We're moving around vehicles on our end. And so I had to drive my old Suburban. I'm driving my old Suburban home, right? Taking home. And I'm like, dude, I was driving this fucking thing. And like, dude, compared to my Denali, that Suburban is a piece of shit. But I thought that was like the bee's knees when I first got it, right? But then now, like, I'm driving this fucking Rolls Royce. That Denali is like a fucking hoopty. You know what I'm saying?
So he was talking about like all the details of it. He's like, bro, it doesn't shift weight. It turns perfectly. Like, he's like, this is like driving a cloud.
Yeah. I said the amount of minds that went like, this is the purest example of human potential.
And do you remember what I told you? How they do it? I told you exactly what he just said. I said they take every single detail that you would never think of, and they dive so deep into those details to perfect those details. And then these are like ingredients of the recipe. And once all those ingredients are perfected with high levels of standard and you put them together, it creates the whole thing. Yeah. And I think part of what you're saying, dude, one of the biggest things that I notice just from being in the personal development space for so long and the entrepreneurship space for so long is that people think they can build an empire with a fucking shitty product if they're a good enough marketer. And you cannot do that. It's impossible for all the reasons that you just explained. It's a false expectation, And so like eat your own sandwiches. Like you should only want to eat your own sandwiches. You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, I don't use any fucking buddy else's protein powder. I use my fucking protein powder. You know why? Because I think it's the best. Period. And no offense to my homies that got other companies. I don't use your powder. I use my powder because I believe in it. Yeah. All right. So it's part of the deal. Your shit should be so fucking good, dude, that you don't even want to wear other people's shit. You don't want to drive other people's cars. You don't want to eat other people's food. You want your shit because it's literally the best. And when you figure that out, you actually have a sustainable model for the long term because the product sells itself, right? Like, dude, our level 1 protein, I spent 19 months in the lab working on that product in 2008 before we even launched the company. Do you know how many times we reformulated it? Fucking 0. And it continues to sell. We sell probably more raw protein than pretty much anybody else on the fucking planet right now.
So you're saying 19 months before it even launched, like that? You worked on it that long,
bro? I went to the lab every fucking day. This is actually how I met Emily, because Emily fucking worked at a place right next to the lab, and I was there every day. So I went to fucking see my buddy John, who was her boss. This is like
that was it.
Yes, you have to be obsessed with the quality of your shit, dude. Yeah. Like, and I'm not sitting here saying there isn't better stuff, but the minute I find it, I'm gonna work my ass off to pass it up. And like that's the competitive nature and the obsession that you have to have about your own standards. That's going to take you where you want to go. And there's really no other, like you guys spend too much time looking for the fucking hack and not enough time dealing with the reality of just being great at what you do.
Love that, man.
And let me give you an A/B just from a leverage perspective. So option 1 is you spend 2 months formulating the product and then you spend the rest of your life trying to sell it. Option 2 is you spend 2 years formulating the product and then you let your customer sell it for you for the rest of your life. Like one is 2 months of work and it sounds shorter, but you're actually signing up for more work over the long term. So if you want to be lazy and make tons of money, take longer on the front end, because in the back, the wave will carry itself.
How much of this do you think, first of all, that's awesome. Second, but dude, how much of that do you think is related to people's fear of charging a little bit more for their product?
I actually think it's more because I think people wouldn't be afraid of charging more for the product if they went through all that. I think they're afraid to charge more for the product because they never did that. So they see they see level one, and then they're like, well, I should charge, like, man, the margins he must be making, but they never did they haven't earned the quality of product, whether it's a service or a physical good, to charge the premium, but they just want to jump there. And then they actually have a bigger ripoff and even more, because everyone's always price and value are interrelated, right?
They're amplifying the fucking fraud.
Yeah.
In their own mind.
Like Rolls-Royce ain't worried about the cost of the truck.
No, because they know that there's no missed dots or cross
they
T's.
know about the Chevy Silverado drivers.
Like, they know what went into it.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah.
And then you feel like, if anything, you should be like, my God, maybe I should raise the, like, I know, I spent 2 years on this thing.
Yeah.
Right? And then you would feel completely fine, because if anyone looked at you, could look them back in the eyes and be like, so the protein. I was like, have you ever noticed when you shake up your protein, it's got little lumps in it? I was like, that was a detail that the person that you bought it from didn't think about. If you ever drink it and get a little gassy sometimes, I was like, it's because they added extra filler in because they wanted to make it heavier, but not actually increase the protein content. Didn't think about that, right? Like, and you just start going down the 100 BBs, and then people are like, okay, I get it. Like,
it's about shit,
right. And then it merits the price.